As you probably know, we got a commitment to quality here at PlayStation. And that is why I'm so proud to introduce a new member of the PlayStation Studios family.
We need to talk about PlayStation, and we need to talk about Bluepoint Games. PlayStation, what in the hell are you guys doing over there? So you purchased Bluepoint Games back in 2021. It is now 5 years later. You shut them down. What's going on with this live service initiative you guys are forcing across the board for a lot of your studios? You've closed down some of your studios because of this. Decisions that you are making as a brand, then pushing that onto your developers and then closing them down. What was the point of purchasing Bluepoint Games 5 years ago if you were going to shut them down like this? I am a big fan of Bluepoint Games. I loved a lot of the projects they've made over the years, a lot of their HD collections and their remakes. In case you're not too familiar on what they have made, back during the PlayStation 3 days, they made some of the best games on that system. Now, they are HD collections of games that have existed before. So we did have the Metal Gear Solid HD collection, which I absolutely loved. I love Metal Gear Solid 3, and it was nice to be able to play Peace Walker on the PS3 since I wasn't a huge fan of controlling the camera with the face buttons of the PSP. Then we had probably the first HD collection on PlayStation 3 that started the trend of making remasters back on the PS3. That was the God of War HD collection, which is quite possibly my favorite collection of all time. I adore God of War 1 and 2, and seeing that those games come forward was an absolute dream come true. They did work on the PlayStation 4 collection of the Uncharted games, Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection. They did have a lot of changes to, especially in the aiming in Uncharted 3, but that collection right there as well. Uncharted 1, 2, and 3. Absolutely love those games, and seeing those games be brought forward by Bluepoint was awesome. And then the two most notable remakes that they made in 2018, Shadow of the Colossus remake, which a lot of people love. I still need to get through that one. And most recently, not so recently because it was 5 years ago, launched with the PS5, the Demon's Souls remake, which is adored by Demon's Souls aficionados. So in case you weren't too familiar on what games and projects they've worked on, those are the games that they made. So another thing we have to talk about when we talk about Bluepoint Games is the absolute mismanagement of that studio. So PlayStation buys them in 2021, right? Most people figured it was so that they could work on remakes and remasters of beloved PlayStation IP, maybe Ratchet and Clank, God of War remakes, maybe the Sly Collection, maybe they wanted to bring that forward, who knows, but a lot of us figured that's what they would have been working on. So PlayStation buys them in 2021, then make them work on God of War Ragnarok with Sony Santa Monica as a support team. Couldn't they have someone else doing that? After that, they stuck them on a live service project that Sony then went and canceled. I'm guessing they didn't like what they saw. Why were they working on a multiplayer live service game? Makes no goddamn sense at all. They're known for remakes and remasters. You put them on these projects, you then are disappointed by these projects because that's not what they're experienced in. You shut them down. Okay. Complete stupidity over there, I guess. And this brings up another question. You know how we had nothing during the 20th anniversary of God of War? Why weren't Bluepoint Games working on remakes already after that Demon's Souls remake? So Sony Santa Monica is working on those, I'm guessing. Why aren't they working on the next God of War title, the next AAA God of War? You could have had Bluepoint Games already working on these remakes and have them ready at this point. At least the first God of War. I keep thinking about this like it's going to make sense. I'm just so confused with the direction PlayStation is taking. I hate this push that Sony and PlayStation has been on in the last couple years, their live service push. They made a lot of their studios work on live service games. We saw the atrocity that Concord was. All of a sudden, Sony started to question all of their live service games, and a lot of them were canceled. Sony, you're known for, your first party AAA story games. Maybe that's what you should be making your studios work on, what you're known for. I don't know why you think you could make your own Fortnite. I don't know where you got this idea. I get it, you want money, but if you don't take these projects seriously, they're never going to work out, and we're just going to end up losing on the other side with having no projects ready, no story AAA games ready on the PlayStation 5. Have you seen the first party titles that Sony has made for the PS5? We have God of War Ragnarok, which feels like an expansion, a pretty big expansion, but an expansion at that. We have Horizon, the second Horizon game, that also released on PS4. Again, so did Ragnarok. The one notable AAA, well, not really AAA, game that they made for PS5 was Returnal. It didn't sell amazing. I believe it sold almost 1 million copies. That game was amazing, made by Housemarque, but that's about it. I honestly can't think of anything. And this generation is the generation where I switched over to PC, and there is a reason for that. It's not just because, I want to play the best version possible of a game, but it's the lack of original games, the lack of original IP for the PS5. Ever since they bought Bungie, they've been on this downward spiral, man, and I do not get it. We already have a Fortnite. We already have an Apex Legends. We already have these games. No one is going to drop those games. The people that are into Fortnite will continue to play Fortnite. They're not going to play fair games. I'm sorry to say that, but they're not. Get it through your head. Just think about what happened with Naughty Dog. They haven't released a game in years, and that is because they were working on a multiplayer game. The Factions Expanded multiplayer game. Bungie went to review that game, to see it, and they basically said, what's your plan for the game? What's your plan to have content ready for this game, in the years to come? Naughty Dog then says, oh, no, we don't want to work on a multiplayer game for multiple years. We want to make story games. The game then gets canceled after a couple years in development. We lose all of that time. We don't get a game out of that because PlayStation's mismanagement of Naughty Dog. Why was Naughty Dog making that game? Why couldn't we have another studio making that game? Don't get me wrong, I wanted to play that game. I love Factions for The Last of Us Remastered. I think it's an awesome multiplayer mode. Seeing that expanded into its own game, a much bigger game, I would have been all about that. But someone else should have been making that game. I am extremely worried about PlayStation's other studios now. Think about Housemarque, think about Team Asobi, think about Bend Studio. When was the last time Bend released a game? Days Gone, and Sony called that a disappointment, even though it sold 10 million copies, but I guess it's a disappointment. Team Asobi, right? What if they release a game that doesn't sell well? The next Astrobot game. Are they gonna shut them down or put them on a Astrobot live service game? What's gonna happen with that studio? Think about Housemarque, right? What if Sorrows completely fails? What if it doesn't sell? They will probably get shut down after that or put on some support project or a live service game. These story focused, single player focused developers are getting shut down because they can't create the next Fortnite. It's absolutely stupid. All of PlayStation's first party studios have been mismanaged, at least to some extent, over the last couple of years. Bluepoint should have been working on a remake of a PlayStation adored first party IP. They should have been working on a remaster of some type of collection. God of War, Sly, Ratchet and Clank. But at the end of the day, Sony could care less. If they cared, they would stop making really stupid decisions. All they see now is the potential of a Fortnite, the potential of having all that money come in. They see it from getting 30% cuts from all of the money Fortnite makes on PlayStation. They know that if they make their own Fortnite, they will get 100% from that. And that is why Bluepoint Games is shutting down. All they see is money now. And that is not the PlayStation we grew up on. To some extent, of course, you know, all these companies, all they want is money, but they cared more before. During the PlayStation 3 generation, they were making games for no reason. No one bought Starhawk, but they made it. And that is the point, man. Sometimes you just have to make a game to make a game. And this generation, they don't care about making games. They care about making games that make money. And that's sad, man. You lose a lot of the magic of games doing that. When all you see is the dollar, then you don't see what your fans and your supporters want. It's also really sad to see Bluepoint Games' legacy just end like that. Who knows what projects they could have made. You know, it would have been awesome to see their version of a God of War remake. Would have been awesome to see them bring back the Sly collection, but that's not ever gonna happen now. Going back to 2021, I don't think Bluepoint Games should have sold. They should not have sold to PlayStation. At the time, it felt right. You know, they've worked together for so many years, and we thought they were going to make remakes and remasters. Them selling to PlayStation felt like finally we have a remake and remaster studio, and that is all they're going to make, and that is what we will see. But they should have remained independent. Now that I think about it, they would have had made probably way more games that way, and they would have been around today, and they're not. So one last message here for Bluepoint Games. Rest in peace. Thank you for all the games you've ever made. To all the developers that were fired and let go, or the developers that have been moved to other PlayStation studios, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for all the things you created. Thank you for all the memories I have with all of those games that you created. And I hope the best for you guys. So if you enjoyed this video, my first video here on this channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It would truly help me out a bunch, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.